Hey everyone, how are we doing today? This is James Sweeney, aka SplitSuit, and welcome back to another video. And as part of the Ask SplitSuit a Question series, a couple people did ask hand history questions, and I wanted to answer one today that I thought was very interesting. And today's hand comes from Adam T, and Adam prefaces the hand by saying, I played some MTTs and one spot keeps coming up where I don't know what to do. Full ring game, under the gun +1 shoves, who's an ultra fish who's going all in with things like Jack 5, Queen 7, etc., with about 30 big blinds, and I have 3s in MP2. So if we recreate this situation, it looks like this. There's roughly a 30 big blind shove, we're in middle position with 3s and roughly 22 big blinds, and then Adam goes on to say, the players behind me have around 20 to 25 big blinds, and let's say that they don't call a called shove unless they have ace king or queens plus, and again there are 5 players behind us. So Adam is partially looking for a mathematical way of solving this in the sense of how can we determine how often we're going to get called in a situation where they're only going to continue here if we call with queens plus and ace king. Well, one of the things we can do in a situation like that is multiply the percentage chance that each person behind us folds, and then we'll just go from there. So one way we can start by doing this is pull up Equilab. We can plug in a range of queens plus ace king, and we can see what percentage of hands that is. We notice that's roughly 2.6%, which means that we can expect them to fold, give or take around, 97.4% of the time. So in a situation where there are 5 players behind and they're all going to do the exact same thing, we can just plug in that number, so 0.974. We can raise that to the 5th power because we're just boom, 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 boom. Do this, 5 equals, and we notice that it gives us 88%. So we can expect them all to fold 88% of the time, and about 12% of the time we're going to get one or more callers. It could go a little bit more complicated than that when you start factoring in things like card removal and blah, 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 but this gets us close enough, and 88% will be the number we'll work with in this video. Alright, so that was Adam's actually main question, was how to calculate the probability of getting called behind you, and you just take the probability of each of them folding, multiply them by the by each one. So say one person was going to call 90, the other person was going to call 88% of the time, the other person was going to call 97% of the time, blah, blah, blah. You just multiply those all together, and that gives you the percentage chance that they all fold. But in this situation, I wanted to go a step further here because I thought this was actually an interesting situation. And while I don't play MTTs, I still thought that this was a very mathematical situation that I wanted to explore with you guys. And especially because Adam said that he called here and he thought the call was going to be profitable, I want to run through it and prove whether or not that's actually the case. So whenever we do this kind of work, or whenever I do it personally, I like to pull out Excel and do it all in a spreadsheet. I find it's a little bit easier, but if you wanted to, you could certainly do it by hand. You could certainly just do it on a notepad document, whatever you want to do. The reason why I like to do it in Excel mainly is 1, to keep it nice and organized, and 2, so I can change a variable on the fly and see how the total equation changes. If you're unfamiliar with how to use EV, I've done 2 great videos in the Quick Play series on them. One is on basic EV, and then the other is on advanced EV. This would definitely mimic the advanced EV a little bit more, because if you look at that equation that we're building for the EV formula up above, it's a little scary, it's a little gross, but also it helps us get a really, really nice answer here. So in a situation like this, we need a couple of different pieces of information. We need how often the players behind us are going to fold, which is that 88% we worked out earlier. We need our equity in 2 different situations. One, if we just get called, if we call and then everyone behind us folds, so we just go heads up against the under the gun +1. In this situation, Adam thought that he was essentially getting shoved on by a random range, which would give us 54% equity. Then we need our equity if we call and someone behind us calls with that queens plus ace king range. Evaluate that. You notice that we have give or take around 25% equity. Plug in a couple of big blind things. So if we call, everyone else folds, and we win 23.5 big blinds. If we end up losing this hand, we're out 22 big blinds and of course out of the tournament. And if we win, on average, we'll win about 45 big blinds. And that's estimated, and this is of course if one of the other players calls. And this is estimated because it's a little bit different if, say, the button calls and then we win that extra $1.50 from the blinds, or if one of the blinds calls and it shaves off just a pinch. So 45 is a nice round estimated number that at least gets us close in this spot. And then when we're building the EV equation itself, there's essentially two different kind of outcomes, right? There's the times that everyone folds and we have our equity and we win or we lose. And then there's the time that someone behind us calls. And then again, that happens a much smaller percentage of the time, 12%. And then our equity there. And of course, our equity is much, much lower when we get called by that really, really strong nutted range. So you notice in that kind of situation that we have an estimated value of plus 1.6, and that's not terrible. It's give or take around, plus 7% on our stack, but I would definitely ask whether or not that's going to be worthwhile and could we find better situations. And one of the things, and again, why I like to run this in Excel is so that I can change a variable on the fly. One quick thing I want to do here is this. Let's say he's not shoving a random range. Let's say he's just shoving, say, the top 50% of his range. Okay, we're going to do this again two different ways. One is just against us, and you notice that our equity is actually down, even if he's shoving a super huge range of hands. So that gives us 49% equity here, which starts to drop things off. And then, of course, if we do that and the other person calls, we're going to actually have pretty much the same exact 25% equity. So in that situation, it actually becomes a negative shove. And obviously, if this person is shoving even like a decently strong range of hands, this becomes really, really negative. And again, Adam said that he thought that this was going to be okay, but it's just really not. This number down here is if we end up getting looked up by say it's just against us, another gun +1. And again, you notice like this is like super, super break in this scenario, even in a best case where he's shoving the top 50% of his range. So I really don't think this is going to be a good play for us, and I think this is why we need to work on our estimated value stuff off the table so that this stuff becomes really, really easy and ingrained, and we can understand whether or not we're taking profitable plays. So Adam, thanks for the great question and the really interesting situation, and hopefully this gets you started the next time you find yourself in a similar spot. Again, I personally would have folded. I don't think that it's going to be correct unless he's really shoving 100% of his range pre-flop, which I think is a little difficult to believe, at least at that stack size. So I think you can kind of wait off, find a slightly better situation, and then make the call with a better range of hands where your EV is going to be higher, and thus you're going to have a higher ROI on your call. But thank you very much for the hand. If you or anyone else has a poker-related hand or question, feel free to leave it on our Google Plus page. I'll leave a link for that in the description box. And also please make sure to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this type of video. So same as always, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to let me know. Otherwise, good luck out there and happy grinding.